You can't stop me from seeing my ex anytime I want. Those were the last words she ever spoke to me as a wife. Before that night, I used to think peace was something you could build brick by brick if you just worked hard enough and loved. Honestly, my name's Michael Carter. And for most of my life, I believed effort could fix anything. I wasn't born lucky, or rich, or special. I just learned early that steady beats loud, and consistency beats charm. At 38, I'd built a logistics company from a dusty rented office in Dallas. No fancy cars. No chauffeur suites. Just early mornings. Long drives. And a small team that trusted me, because I never broke my word. My house wasn't big, but it was mine, clean. Quiet. Full of the smell of coffee in the morning and laughter at night. Or at least, it used to be. Rachel came into my life 3 years before everything fell apart. She wasn't perfect, and that was part of what drew me in. A single mother with tired eyes and a gentle voice. She carried both softness and strength. She told me how her ex, Derek, had walked out when their daughter, Ellie, was born, how she'd worked nights at a diner, trying to hold it all together. I remember our third date. We sat in an old booth that smelled like coffee and rain. She said, "I don't expect you to save me. I just want a chance to start again." And I believed her. When I met Ellie, all curls, crayons, and shy glances, she peeked at me from behind her mom's legs and whispered, "Hi." That single word changed the direction of my life. I didn't realize it then, but that's the moment I became a father. From that day forward, I wasn't just building a company. I was building a family. I paid for school uniforms, fixed broken toys, read bedtime stories that ended with "love you, Daddy Michael," and felt something inside me heal every time she said it. Rachel used to look at me like I'd done the impossible, given them both safety. And for a while, it really did feel like peace. Our evenings were simply spaghetti dinners, TV humming in the background, Ellie curled against her mom, and Rachel's head resting on my shoulder. She'd whisper, "You make life quiet again." Back then, quiet sounded like heaven, but peace is fragile. It doesn't shatter with explosions. It fades through small things, a glance held too long at a text, a change in laughter, a silence that stretches just a little too far. I didn't notice it at first. Maybe I didn't want to. I thought the long hours, the late nights, the new clothes, they were just signs that life was getting better. After all, I wanted her to feel alive again, but deep down, something in me started to tighten. That instinct men have when the energy in their home changes. You can smell it before you can name it. I'd tell myself, "You married for peace. Remember," and go back to balancing the books. Pretending everything was fine. I wasn't the kind of man who snooped through phones or checked mileage on cars. Trust was my default. Loyalty wasn't just something I gave, it was how I lived. And that's why betrayal doesn't just sting, it rewires you. Looking back now, I can see the signs clearly, the perfume I hadn't smelled before. The way her laughter no longer reached her eyes. The way she started saying "I" instead of "we." But in those days, I just smiled through it. Believing love could weather anything. I didn't marry for excitement. I married for peace. But peace, I learned, can be shattered quietly. And when it breaks, it doesn't make a sound, not right away. It just leaves you sitting in the dark one night, realizing the silence around you isn't comfort anymore. It's the warning before the storm. They say distance doesn't happen overnight. That's a lie. Sometimes it does. One morning you wake up, and something invisible has shifted. The air feels different. The laughter feels borrowed. The woman beside you feels like someone you used to know. For me, it started small. So small I almost convinced myself. I imagined it. Rachel began dressing differently. New perfume. New energy. She'd stand longer in front of the mirror before work, twisting her hair, checking her reflection twice. The soft jeans and t-shirts I used to see her in turned into low-cut tops, fitted skirts. The kind of confidence that used to be ours, not just hers. I told myself, good. She's feeling good again. That's what any decent man would want. Right. But there's a line between feeling good and trying to be seen. Then came the phone. The constant notifications. The laughter at messages she wouldn't explain. I'd ask who it was, and she'd smile without looking up. Just a friend. Which one, I'd ask, gently. Shrug. You wouldn't know him. And that word him carried more weight than I wanted to admit. I'd watch her tipping fast, smiling softly at a screen that used to be replaced by my face across the dinner table. And that's when denial became a survival skill. Everyone goes through phases. I told myself, married life isn't always fireworks. Maybe she just needs space. Maybe I've been working too much. Maybe she just wants to feel like more than someone's wife. We always find reasons to excuse the ones we love. One evening, she mentioned him, the name I hadn't heard in years. Derek reached out. She said casually, spooning soup into Ellie's bowl. I looked up. Your ex. She nodded, as if it were no big deal. He says he wants to reconnect, for Ellie's sake. He feels bad for not being around. There are moments when silence feels safer than truth. I nodded, forcing my voice to stay even. If it's for Ellie, that's fine. Just keep me in the loop. She smiled, that short, empty smile people use when they have no intention of doing what you ask. Of course, that night, she stayed up late on her phone again. I heard soft typing from the hallway, fast. Urgent. Secret. I wanted to ask, but pride is a strange thing. It keeps a man quiet when he should speak. Because asking means admitting you feel threatened. And I wasn't ready to feel that way. Days turned into weeks. Her laughter changed lighter, sharper, full of something I couldn't touch anymore. Her conversations got shorter. She stopped asking about my work, stopped waiting up for me, stopped doing the little things that used to say, I see you. Instead, she started talking about Derek more, how he's changed, how he really wants to be a dad this time. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe people could change, that second chances meant something. I told her, if he wants to be a father, that's a good thing. Ellie deserves that. And maybe I said it because I needed to hear myself say it, to believe I was still the reasonable one, the calm one, the strong one, but inside, something twisted, not from jealousy, but from something deeper, intuition. Men don't always see the truth, but we feel it. The late nights became normal. The excuses recycled girls' night. Ellie's school meeting. Just errands. But each time she left, she wore the same perfume, the one that smelled like expensive guilt. The photos on her phone changed too. I'd see her smiling in ways she hadn't smiled for me in months. A confidence that looked borrowed, not earned. And still, I stayed quiet, because love makes you patient. Too patient. I thought giving her space would bring her back. I thought staying calm would remind her of the peace she once said she loved. But peace, it turns out, can't compete with chaos when someone starts craving it again. One Friday night, she walked through the door later than usual. I was sitting on the couch, laptop open, pretending to work. Her lipstick was smudged, perfume still thick in the air. She froze for a second, like she hadn't expected me to be awake, then smiled. "You're still up," I said, "just finishing some reports." She nodded, dropped her purse, and headed straight for the shower. No kiss. No conversation. I stared at the closed bathroom door and realized something had ended quietly. Weeks ago, I just hadn't signed the death certificate yet. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the house felt louder: the hum of the fridge, the creak of the ceiling fan, the soft laughter of Ellie talking in her sleep. And somewhere between midnight and 3 a.m., I understood something I hadn't before. You don't lose someone all at once. You lose them in moments, the unanswered calls, the hollow laughter, the nights they stop turning towards you in bed. But what really hurts is knowing you'd still forgive them if they just told you the truth. The next morning, Rachel was bright and cheerful, humming as she made pancakes. She looked like the picture of domestic happiness, like nothing had changed. Maybe for her, nothing had. She poured me coffee and said, "Derek might stop by this weekend. He wants to talk about school stuff for Ellie." I forced a smile. "Sure. Just let me know when." She nodded quickly. "Of course." But I already knew she wouldn't. That afternoon, she left the house in a rush. Phone pressed to her ear. Voice soft. Private. I stood at the window watching her drive away. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I just felt distance, a cold space between us that no amount of patience could fill. It's strange when a man finally stops chasing explanations. He begins to see everything clearly. The late nights weren't random. The distance wasn't stress. The lies weren't small. They were all part of a story I hadn't written but was forced to live in. And somewhere, beneath all that confusion, Danielle, and quiet hurt, I started to feel something new. Not rage, not heartbreak, just a calm awareness that the woman standing in my kitchen each morning wasn't really my wife anymore. She was a guest, and I was the only one who hadn't realized the visit was over. Thursday nights used to be my favorite. They carried a rhythm dinner at 6. Ellie's giggles floating from the living room. Rachel humming softly as she folded laundry. It was the kind of ordinary peace I thought would last forever. But that night, the house greeted me with silence. No laughter. No TV. No sound at all. Just stillness. At first, I thought maybe they'd gone for ice cream. Or maybe Rachel had taken Ellie to see her mom. But the longer I stood there, the heavier the quiet became. Her purse wasn't by the door. Ellie's backpack was gone. And the lights in every room felt too still, too deliberate, like someone had turned them off for the last time. I called Rachel once. No answer. Twice. Straight to voicemail. By the 6th call, I was staring at my phone, trying to figure out when my marriage had stopped being something you could reach. I sat down on the couch, still in my work shirt, waiting for headlights to pull into the driveway. They never came. Hours passed. The house felt smaller with every tick of the clock. I opened the fridge, found Ellie's drawing taped to the door, 3 stick figures holding hands. Mommy, Daddy, me. I didn't know it yet. But that drawing would be the last time all 3 of us were in the same picture. At 1147, my phone buzzed. A notification. Not a call. Not a text. Facebook. I opened it. And there it was. Rachel, smiling like she'd never known exhaustion, standing next to Derek, the man who'd once walked away from her, his arm around her waist. Ellie in his arms. The caption read, "Healing what was broken." I stared at that sentence for a long time, trying to understand what exactly she thought was broken and what she believed she was healing. Something in me didn't break. It froze. No shouting. No slam doors. Just a sudden, terrifying stillness, the kind that comes when you finally see the truth and realize it's been staring at you for months. I didn't sleep that night. Or the next. I went to work like always. Answered calls. Signed invoices. Smiled when I had to. But inside, he felt like I'm standing behind glass, watching a version of his life that no longer belonged to him. People around me didn't notice. They never do. Men like me, we're good at holding the line. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw that picture. Rachel's head tilted against Derek's shoulder. Ellie's innocent smile. And I wondered what she told her daughter. Did she say I was busy, away on business? Did she erase me before I even had the chance to fight for my place? By the second night, the ache had turned to clarity. I realized I'd been loving a woman who missed the chaos she used to escape from. And I was the peace she could never sit still in. I didn't hate her for it. Not yet. Hate takes energy. I didn't have any left. Instead, I sat alone in that dim living room, surrounded by the echoes of everything I built, the walls I painted, the furniture I paid for, the memories that suddenly felt rented. The only sound was the clock, tick, 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 every second marking the end of something that used to matter. I remember thinking, this is how betrayal really feels. It doesn't come with fireworks or screaming. It comes with silence. With the realization that the person you'd trust to save your life wouldn't even answer your call. And in that silence, something in me shifted. The man who believed effort could fix anything, he was gone. What was left was quieter, sharper, unforgiving. When a man finally stops forgiving, that's when the story really begins. The next morning, I brewed coffee like always. Same mug, same spoon, same routine. But the taste had changed. Everything had. I didn't wait for her to come home. I didn't chase explanations or scroll through messages looking for proof. I didn't need to. The proof was already public, liked, shared, and heart reacted by people who had no idea they were looking at the funeral of a marriage. I looked around the house at the couch, where Ellie used to fall asleep in my lap. At the window Rachel used to open on sunny mornings, and I understood something that would carry me through everything that came next. You can survive betrayal if you stop trying to make sense of it. That's when you begin to heal, not with rage, not with tears, but with silence. And as the sun came up that morning, I made a promise to myself. I would never beg for clarity from someone who chose confusion. When she finally came home, it wasn't guilt that walked through that door. It was arrogance, wrapped in perfume and silence. 2 full days had passed. No message. No apology. Just the sound of keys dropping on the counter like nothing had happened. She looked at me with the indifference of someone who believed she'd already won. Oh. Relax, she said, brushing past me. I told you Derek is part of my life. You can't stop me. That was it. No explanation. No shame. Just entitlement served cold. And I remember standing there, realizing she wasn't trying to fix anything. She was testing how far she could go before I broke. But he didn't break. I smiled, not out of kindness, but understanding. You're right, I said softly. It's sant. And that was the end of the argument. Because some things don't need to be fought out loud. They need to be handled quietly. She didn't know it. But the moment I said those words, the power in our marriage shifted. The same silence she once used to punish me, now it belonged to me. That night, I didn't pace the floor. I didn't beg for answers or replay the photo in my head. I just sat alone, staring at the dark window, letting the calm settle in like armor. People think revenge is about anger. It's not. Real revenge is clarity. It's when you finally stop reacting and start planning. At 1037 p.m., I picked up my phone and scrolled to a contact I hadn't used in years. Grant Hayes. Attorney. Old friend. The man who helped me set up my first company. When he answered, his voice was tired. "Mike, it's late. Everything okay? Tomorrow at 10. I said quietly. "We start." He paused for half a second, then replied, "I'll clear my schedule." I hung up without another word. No anger. No shaking hands. Just that deep, surgical kind of calm that men find when there's nothing left to lose, only things left to protect. I sat there a while longer, listening to the house breathe. Rachel was asleep in the guest room. Ellie's soft snoring floated down the hallway, and I realized that while she'd been out healing what was broken, I'd been preparing what would outlast her entirely. My heart wasn't racing anymore. My hands weren't trembling, because once a man accepts that love without respect is just captivity, something inside him shifts permanently. The next chapter of my life didn't start with an explosion. It started with a phone call and a promise to never let anyone mistake my silence for surrender again. That was the night I stopped being the man she could hurt, and became the man she would never see coming. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. There was no hesitation, no second thoughts, just a strange kind of peace that comes when you finally stop fighting for someone who's already left. At 9:55 a.m., I stood outside my attorney's office. By 10, the papers were on the table. Simple, clean, legal. I didn't waste words. I didn't explain. Grant knew. He'd seen it before, good men reaching their limit. He slid the forms toward me, his voice steady. "You've already done most of the hard work," he said. "You built your life like a fortress. The trust you set up years ago, it protects everything: your company, your home, your accounts. She can't touch a dollar." I nodded. Not satisfaction, just closure. He asked, "You sure about this?" "Yes," I said. "I'm done building bridges for people who only burn them." When it was over, I signed the last page and left without looking back. That's the thing about preparation. It doesn't make you paranoid. It makes you peaceful. I'd created that trust long before Rachel ever entered my life. Not because I expected betrayal, but because I understood how fragile peace can be when it depends on someone else's choices. When I got home, the world felt lighter, sharper. Rachel was in the living room, pacing with her phone in hand, her voice sharp, impatient. "Despérate, Evan," she stopped when she saw me. "Michael," she corrected, forcing a laugh. "Hey, something's wrong with my card. It declined at the grocery store, at the gas station, everywhere. Can you check with the bank?" I took off my jacket, hung it neatly, and met her eyes with a calm she couldn't understand. "It's simple," I said. "You can't stop me from doing whatever I want with my money." Her mouth fell open. "You're punishing me." "No," I replied, voice steady. "I'm protecting myself." She laughed, but it cracked halfway through. "You're serious." I said nothing. Silence. "I've learned," says everything. She threw her phone on the couch. "This is insane. I didn't do anything wrong. You're overreacting." I looked at her. Really looked the same woman who once cried in my arms, now standing there like a stranger demanding what she hadn't earned. I said quietly, "You vanished for 2 days, with another man, and told me I couldn't stop you. I'm just listening." Her eyes widened, a mix of shock and fury. "You think this fixes anything? It fixes me," I said, and for the first time in our marriage, she had no response. From that moment on, the house changed. Mornings were colder, evenings quieter. Rachel moved like someone pacing through a cage. She built herself panicked, restless, cornered by consequences she never thought would come. Every time she reached for a card, it failed. Every time she tried to control, she realized she had none. Meanwhile, I went back to my life. I worked. I cooked breakfast for Ellie. I trimmed the hedges. The simple routines that once felt small now felt sacred. And every time Rachel looked at me, expecting an argument, she found none. Just calm. That's what people like her fear the most. Not rage. Not revenge. But silence. Because silence means you've already decided. And there's nothing left to win. She tried to bait me. "You'll regret this," she said one night. I smiled faintly. "I already regret wasting this long." She stormed off. And I sat there, sipping my coffee, knowing the game was over long before she realized she was still playing it. You see, real strength isn't loud. It doesn't demand recognition or applause. It just acts quietly, decisively, and without a single wasted word. By the time Rachel figured out what was really happening, it was too late. The accounts, the assets, the company all secured, all untouchable. The man she thought she could control had become the one she could no longer reach. And that's when I learned one of life's hardest truths. The most powerful move a man can make isn't striking back. It's preparing so well he never has to. The courthouse smelled like old wood and quiet judgment. I walked in calm, no anger, no revenge, just purpose. Rachel was already there, standing beside her attorney, dressed like confidence could save her. But even from across the room, I could see it wasn't confidence. It was fear wearing makeup. Her lawyer spoke first, loud, theatrical, demanding half of everything: my company, my properties, my accounts. He said words like equitable distribution, marital contribution, and fair share. When he finished, my attorney, Grant, stood. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Your Honor," he said, "before this continues, I'd like to present Exhibit A, a certified copy of an irrevocable trust established by my client 2 years before this marriage." He handed the papers to the clerk. The judge scanned them. The room went still. Grant continued, steady and precise. "All corporate shares, real estate, and investments are owned by this trust. Not by Mr. Carter personally. Under state law, these are non-marital assets, untouchable." Rachel blinked. Once. Twice. Her lawyer fumbled through his notes. His voice suddenly small. "Your Honor, my client was unaware." The judge looked up. "Irrelevant. The law is clear." And just like that, everything she'd counted on vanished. Her expression cracked. The arrogance, the defiance gone. All that remained was shock. The gavel struck once. Clean and final, divorce granted. The judge said, "No marital claim." The sound echoed through the room like closure itself. I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. I just stood, shook my attorney's hand, and walked out. Because sometimes a man's silence isn't weakness. Each strateg, outside. The sky was gray, the kind that feels like a clean slate. Ellie ran toward me, her small hand finding mine. And in that moment, I realized peace doesn't always come from holding on. Sometimes it comes from letting go without looking back. Behind me, I heard her voice. "Mikhail," she called out, trembling. "Desperate. Please don't leave me with nothing." I turned once. You left me long before I left you. She froze. Tears didn't move me anymore. Not because I stopped feeling, but because I finally understood what I was worth. We walked away, father and daughter, hand in hand, into a life that finally felt honest again. And as the courthouse faded behind us, I felt something I hadn't in years. Freedom. Gentlemen, loyalty isn't blindness. It's belief. But when belief dies, you don't beg, you rebuild. You don't argue with someone who's already chosen chaos. You protect your peace. And you let silence speak for you. Because the loudest revenge a man can have is a life that no longer needs explaining. So, I'll leave you with this. If the woman you love told you her ex was part of her life, what would you do? Would you fight for her or for yourself? Drop your thoughts below. And remember, every man deserves peace. But not every woman deserves the man who can give it. Subscribe for more stories about strength, clarity, and self-respect.